Hello, and welcome to Samuel's Fortress. I'm your host Kirill, and today we're going to be discussing the Antiquization of Macedonia. Now, if we go back to the early 90s, we will see that in this time period there is a collapse of the communist ideology in Eastern Europe, in Central Europe, in the Balkans, and we see these communist states start to dissolve, the Soviet Union as well as the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Now, the Socialist Republic of Macedonia, which was incorporated in Yugoslavia, gains its independence as a result of the dissolution of the Yugoslav state, and an independent Republic of Macedonia will emerge. Now, what this allows for, there's a potential here for the Macedonians to kind of step back and objectively and soberly re-examine their history and their identity, which was heavily distorted by the Yugoslav regime. That is something we discussed in great detail in the previous episode. Now, instead of doing that, instead of kind of going back and clearing up these Yugoslav distortions and getting the Macedonian question back on track, what happens is that some Macedonians end up making the problem worse. They actually dig themselves into an even deeper hole with a further distortion of the Macedonian identity. Basically, this post-Yugoslav identity crisis, which exists in Macedonia, will lead to a further artificialization of the Macedonian history and identity, and this will be done through the process of Antiquization. Now, Antiquization is also sometimes referred to as ancient Macedonism, and that is because Antiquization or ancient Macedonism basically tries to tie the modern Macedonian identity to antiquity. The idea posits that the modern Macedonians have an unbroken historical connection with the ancient Macedonians, with the Macedonians of antiquity, Philip II, Alexander the Great, the Argead dynasty, and so forth. Now, this is a pseudo-historical position, and it basically forces its adherents to deny or seriously minimize the extent of the Slavic invasions into the Balkans and into Macedonia, which occurred in the early medieval period. Now, this denial of the Slavic invasions into the Balkans, into Macedonia, leads to quite a few historical absurdities. One of the most obvious ones that people can notice right away is if the Slavic invasions never happened, if there was no Slavic invasion to the Balkans, then how and why do the modern Macedonians speak a Slavic language? Adherents of this Antiquization policy and of ancient Macedonism will assert, without any real explanation, that somehow the language just arrives in the Balkans, that basically languages fall out of the sky or they are carried in on the wind. There's really no coherent explanation as to how the Slavic language is brought to the Balkans. It just kind of, like I said, they act like it just appears one day and the people now abandon their centuries-long language and start speaking in a Slavic language. This is clearly absurd, and we know that the language of a certain area changes due to the fact that the people there change, and this is something we can witness today in process. For example, if we look at the American Southwest, if we look at places like California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and so forth, we will see that just a few decades ago, these areas were predominantly English-speaking and Protestant Christian. If you go to the American Southwest now, you will see that the language spoken there is heavily Spanish. It's the Spanish language is heavily spoken in the Southwest. You'll see signs in Spanish, businesses, their advertisements in Spanish. You will hear people speaking Spanish, and so forth. Also, the religion has changed quite heavily in that area from, like I said, Protestant Christianity to Catholicism. Now, these things didn't happen for no reason. They happened because people who speak the Spanish language and practice the Catholic faith moved into those areas and changed the demographics of that region. That is why the language changed. It didn't happen for no reason, like I said. It happened because people who spoke Spanish heavily moved into that region, changed the demographics, and changed the language. That is exactly what happened in the early Middle Ages in the Balkans. And nowhere outside of Macedonia is this even controversial. Not internationally, not even among the other South Slavic nations. Now, another massive absurdity that occurs if you adhere to this ancient Macedonist position is the complete loss of purpose for people like Saint Cyril and Methodius, Saints Clement and Naum, Boris I, etc. These people are noted throughout history and celebrated within the region for bringing literacy and Christianity to these Slavic peoples. However, if the Slavic invasions never occurred, the purpose of these people makes no sense, because the region of Macedonia and the people who live there had already been literate and Christian for centuries prior to the Slavic arrivals. So if the Slavs didn't arrive, what is the purpose of bringing literacy and Christianity to a population that is already literate and Christian? This makes absolutely no sense. The reason why these people are important and why they're celebrated is because they bring literacy and Christianity to an area that is no longer literate and Christian. This area ceased to be so literate and Christian due to the fact that it was flooded by Slavic-speaking pagans. And these Slavs won over the native population of the Balkans linguistically, religiously, culturally, and as a result of this, the natives of that region, the Romanized inhabitants of the Balkans in the early Middle Ages, they either fled to non-Slavic areas or they assimilated within this new Slavic demographic that arrived into the Balkans. Now, here I'm going to cite Professor John Fine, and he writes here, in regard to the problems of denying the Slavic invasion into the Balkans, he writes, quote, "One further problem remains. If the indigenous population remained in some areas in large numbers, then why did Christianity die out throughout the interior? For archaeologists have concluded that that is indeed what happened. Through the dating of early Balkan churches, although the dating of early Balkan churches is a most controversial subject, with archaeologists disagreeing as to whether certain churches are pre-Slavic, that being 4th or 6th century, or early Slavic Christian, 9th to 11th century, they do agree that there is a gap without churches that included the 7th and 8th centuries. Their conclusions leave three possibilities. 1, the generally accepted view, which believes that as a result of the Slavic invasions, the indigenous Christians were more or less eliminated from the area and Christianity in the interior almost completely died out. 2, the dating of some of the churches is incorrect, and actually there are churches from every century, in which case Christianity did not entirely disappear. And 3, since few pre-Slavic churches have been found in the interior, possibly the indigenous population was not really that deeply Christianized. When the invasions came, the priests and missionaries fled, and the indigenous people, though remaining in numbers in the Balkans, in time lost what Christian beliefs they had and reverted back to paganism. In any case, the fate of Christianity shows that either the balance between indigenous people and Slavs was heavily in favor of the latter, or else the indigenous populations had been shaky Christians who easily shed this religion for other rites. In conclusion, in many regions of the Balkans after the invasions, there were two populations, old-timers and newcomers. In time, owing to the superior numbers of the Slavs, again suggesting the invasions were massive, the descendants of the indigenous population on the whole were assimilated and became Slavic-speaking, whereas in Greece, in time aided by more Greeks being settled there in the 9th century, plus the role of the church in the administration, the small number of Slavs scattered throughout Greece and became Hellenized. So what is the origin of this Antiquization theory? What is the origin of ancient Macedonism? Well, it's actually not a terribly modern idea. We can see the roots of this ideology actually dating back to the 19th century and the battle for Macedonia, which is going on in that time period. Basically, ancient Macedonism is a Greek irredentist plan. It's an idea put forward by Greek irredentists meant to culturally dominate the region of Macedonia, particularly Aegean Macedonia. What is going on here on the ground is that the Greek Patriarchate Church is going around and spreading stories among the local Slavic population of the ancient Macedonians, of Philip II, of Alexander the Great. We also see Greek ethnographers creating maps which are labeling the Macedonians as Macedonian Slavs instead of Bulgarians, which all the other ethnographers outside of Greece are labeling them as. And the reason they're doing this is in order to convince the Macedonians that they are not actually Slavs, but that they are Slavophone Greeks. Basically, that they are not the descendants of the Slavs who arrived in the Middle Ages, but that they are the descendants of the ancient Macedonians who just happen to speak a Slavic language for some reason. Again, this is the exact same thing that the modern Macedonists believe, although they don't realize that they're actually propagating a centuries-old Greek irredentist idea. And the reason why the Greeks are doing this is because if the modern Macedonians are the descendants of the ancient Macedonians, and the ancient Macedonians were Greek, then it's very logical that the modern Macedonians should be part of the Hellenic Republic, should be part of the Hellenic realm. And this is why this is a Greek irredentist idea. It is meant to serve this idea of a greater Greece, or of a megali idea, as the Greeks call it, which again seeks to create a large Greek state, which again will incorporate Aegean Macedonia. This projection of this Greek culture and history among the Macedonians as a form of modern Hellenization actually ends up backfiring on the Greeks, as the Macedonians, what happens is the Macedonians will accept the Greek position to an extent, in the sense that they accept the idea that they are the descendants of the ancient Macedonians. However, they reject the idea that the ancient Macedonians were Greeks. They basically state that, yes, like I said, we are the ancient Macedonians, but they were a separate civilization. They weren't Greeks. So yes, we are ancient Macedonians, but not Greek. So like I said, this kind of backfires on the Greeks, as they were not anticipating these mental gymnastics that the Macedonians kind of went through to kind of twist that narrative to suit their benefit. Now, in the post-Yugoslav period, again, we see this de-Hellenized form of ancient Macedonism really appearing in the public consciousness and kind of taking over the discourse in Macedonia regarding the Macedonian ethnicity, identity, and so forth. And one of some of the first evidence we see of this ancient Macedonism appearing in Macedonia is the use of the Virgina sun as the national symbol of the modern Slavic Macedonians, and the incorporation of that symbol into the flag into the official flag of this new Macedonian Republic. And here I have a Virgina sun flags for those who don't know what it looks like. So here we can see the Virgina sun flag. That was the original flag of the independent Macedonian Republic. And the Virgina sun is actually an ancient Macedonian symbol that can be found on the tomb of Philip II. And obviously this is meant to imply a connection to the ancient Macedonians. Now, the Greeks had a huge problem with the Slavic Macedonians using the Virgina sun as their national symbol, because they saw that as an appropriation, if you will, of the ancient Greek identity. And due to international pressure and so forth, the Greeks forced the Macedonians to alter their flag from the Virgina sun flag to the modern flag of Macedonia, which is this one right here. So as you can see, this is kind of some of the same symbolism, a sun on a red field. However, it is not the Virgina sun. And again, this is still the flag of the Republic of Macedonia. I don't care for either one of these flags, if I'm being quite honest with you. I think the Macedonian flag should be the old red and black IMRO flag with a golden lion on it, but no one asks me. So anyway, that is some of the early symbolism that emerges in Macedonia in the post-Yugoslav period. However, this Antiquization policy, or ancient Macedonism, really accelerates under the leadership of Prime Minister Nikola Gruevski, who was the Prime Minister of Macedonia from 2006 to 2016. And in that 10-year period, we see that this ancient Macedonian identity really becomes the core of the modern Macedonian identity. And this ancient Macedonism is basically projected internationally in order to give the appearance that this is the true identity of the Macedonian people. We see highways, stadiums named after Philip II, Alexander the Great. We see statues being built to these ancient figures throughout Skopje in a project called Skopje 2014. And that is kind of the, like I said, this acceleration of this Antiquization idea that occurs during the rule of Nikola Gruevski. And I should say that this is not supported by all Macedonians. This is most heavily supported by adherents to Nikola Gruevski's party, Vamoro Dopamane. But again, that's the process that does occur there. Now, you might be wondering, what is the reason for this accelerated, really aggressive form of ancient Macedonism that is going on in this time period? And the reason, as far as I see it, is Antiquization is a way of legitimizing the Macedonian identity among regional neighbors. Basically, this ancient identity gives the Macedonians, again, historical legitimacy. At least that's the way that its adherents view it. It also helps to differentiate the Macedonian identity from the Bulgarian identity, again, it posits the idea that the Macedonians had a stable ethnic identity prior to the arrival of the Bulgarians in the Balkans, prior to the creation of the medieval Balkan identity, medieval Bulgarian identity, which we went over in a previous video. So basically, what it does is it creates this hermetically sealed history and identity that is meant to put forward the idea that the Macedonians are completely unique and not related to any of the Balkan nations that surround them. Now, there are many problems with ancient Macedonism, with this Antiquization process. There are many detrimental effects that will result from this policy. And one of the biggest problems, I should say, with ancient Macedonism is simply that it's not true. The Slavic theory of the Slavic migration, Slavic invasion, however you want to call it, into the Balkans of the early Middle Ages is widely accepted by academics and historians throughout the world. I did a two-part series on the Slavic invasion of Macedonia several months ago, which we went over in great detail how these Slavic migrations occurred, what the results of those migrations were, and so forth. So again, other than maybe one or two kind of crackpot academics that you can kind of dig up, the historical consensus around the world is that the Slavic invasion to the Balkans absolutely did happen. And no other South Slavic nation, whether it's Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, no other nation denies this. Every other South Slavic nation has a healthy and normal view of its medieval Slavic history. So again, this is ultimately another form of artificializing the Macedonian identity. Another problem with Antiquization of Macedonia is that it imposes the ancient identity and ancient symbolisms on those who don't identify with it. There are Macedonians who consider themselves Slavs, like myself, who do not wish to identify with ancient Hellenic pagan symbolism. I don't want this to be the national symbol that represents me or my identity. And there are many Macedonian Slavs who feel this way, and which is why we don't use this Virginia Sun flag. Another problem is that, and this is a major problem in my opinion, is that it artificially raises the bar for national legitimacy. Basically, there's an implicit assertion here that a nation is not legitimate unless it has an ancient history. It creates a standard that the Macedonians themselves cannot meet, and that many nations can't meet. It raises this bar so high that it creates a standard which, again, cannot be met, and therefore it results in a demoralization of the people, of the Macedonians. And no other nation really imposes these types of unreachable standards on itself. They don't feel the need to justify their existence in this fashion. Basically, what these modern Macedonists don't understand is that national legitimacy is based on the mere existence of the nation itself, not on its grand ancient history. A new nation like Montenegro, for example, is just as legitimate as an old nation like, I don't know, China, Russia, England. That the legitimacy of a nation, again, is in the fact that it exists in the present. There is a state called Macedonia. It is inhabited by Macedonians, and therefore it is legitimate. There's no need to create some artificially high bars to legitimacy that you yourself cannot meet, and that like I said, many nations can't meet. One final problem with Macedonism, with ancient Macedonism, and this project of Antiquization that I would like to discuss is, frankly, how anti-Slavic it is by its very nature. And basically, it puts forward this implicit assertion that the Slavic medieval history of Macedonia isn't good enough. It isn't good enough in order to justify the modern Macedonian nation somehow. And this is truly tragic, in my opinion, given how glorious our history is as Macedonians, even if we set aside antiquity, the ancient Macedonians, and so forth. It's also widely recognized and unquestionable. Our history as a Slavic Orthodox people who were birthed in the early Middle Ages, again, is not questioned by anybody. The whole world accepts that Old Church Slavonic is based on the Slavic dialects spoken in the Macedonian lands in the Middle Ages. The whole world accepts that Macedonia, albeit under the First Bulgarian Empire and funded by the Bulgarian crown, is the center of Slavic culture in the Middle Ages. And Macedonia basically is where the Slavic and the Hellenic or Eastern Roman civilizations meet. It is the crossroads of civilizations through which Orthodox Christianity is transmitted from the Roman to the Slavic world. In a way, the Byzantine influence on the Russian Empire, for example, passes through Macedonia. It would not be unfair to state, in my opinion, that Macedonia is a truly holy land where Orthodox Christianity was spread to these Slavic peoples. And for this reason, we have no reason to be ashamed of our Slavic and Orthodox identity and abandon it for some sort of ancient Macedonism. There's no reason to abandon our proud and widely accepted Slavic medieval history in order to chase mirages in antiquity. For the record, no one is stating, I certainly am not stating, that the ancient history of the region, the ancient history of Macedonia, should be discarded or blacked out, or we should not be somehow exploring or investigating any cultural or genetic legacy that we today may have from antiquity. However, my position is that this needs to be done in a very objective, sober, and academic fashion in which there is a serious investigation as to what, like I said, legacy we have today from those people, whether they be the ancient Macedonians, the Paeonians, Dardanians, Thracians, Illyrians, whoever, even what legacy we may have from the Gothic invasions in late antiquity. So again, I'm not stating that we are Slavic. There's no other place for any other cultural legacy in the modern Macedonian identity. Certainly the Slavic Orthodox identity is the foundation and what we should be basing our identity off of, but I'm not saying we should completely discard or fail to take into consideration these other cultural, like I said, or even genetic legacies. What I am vehemently opposed to is making some sort of conclusion from the very start that yes, we are the ancient Macedonians, undoubtedly we are the ancient Macedonians, and then going around cherry picking historical facts to try to piece together some sort of barely coherent historical narrative to support the conclusion which was asserted beforehand, before any investigation even began. This is very detrimental because we should not be lying to ourselves first and foremost as to who we are. We shouldn't be distorting our own history and distorting our vision of who our ancestors were, what our cultural, linguistic, ethnic legacy is, and so forth. It's not healthy for us as a people to be doing that to our own consciousness. But also it's very detrimental because it basically makes us a laughing stock in front of the whole world, in front of Europe. I'll tell you, quite frankly, to those of you who believe in this ancient Macedonianism, that no one outside of Macedonia believes this. It is seen as completely foolish. And if your whole goal is to legitimize your identity with Antiquization, you have done the complete opposite, and you have delegitimized yourself by putting forward theories that everyone knows to be false. So again, no one believes this nonsense of some sort of connection between the modern Macedonians and the ancient Macedonians. This is actually working against your favor. It doesn't legitimize Macedonia, it delegitimizes it, and it puts you on a weaker footing. Instead of fighting this battle for the Macedonian identity, instead of fighting for the Macedonian national identity, character, and so forth from a firm, stable ground, which is Slavic Orthodoxy that no one in the entire world denies, to move off that ground and fight this battle in the quicksand that is antiquity, in this completely unstable, very muddy, from this very unfirm, unstable position, like I said, is very, very foolish. It's, like I said, it's not good for us, and it doesn't project legitimacy to the whole world. So again, if I have one request to all the Macedonians, it would be to deeply consider whether this form of legitimization, what you think is a legitimization, is actually working in your benefit, or whether it's actually extremely harmful, detrimental, not only to yourself, but to the external image of Macedonia.